Can you retire? Ask your parents. Ask your parents. So the vast majority of people watching this YouTube channel are probably between the ages of 45 and 65. So many pre-retirees, many soon-to-be retirees, and a few are going to be just retired. I'm telling you, man, I've been doing this stuff for so long. Just ask your parents what their spending was when they went from pre-retirement to initial stage of retirement to longevity in retirement. Just ask. I told these two people yesterday, man, two groups of people. And one was, he said his dad was like, his feet hurt as he got older. You know what I'm saying? So he didn't want to take that cruise where you can get off in, I don't know, Italy someplace and walk around exploring the Vatican. He goes, man, his feet hurt. Didn't want to do it anymore. Thankfully, he did it when he was younger. Shocking. So these guys like, look, same thing. They're like, man, we got to retire because we know we're not sure how much longer we have to enjoy it while we're sprite enough to be able to enjoy it. These other people, the same kind of thing, man. Their parents just like, man, we just don't do as much because you get older. Just less propensity, less desire to do that stuff. So we're going to look at this chart from, remember, it's always spending. Just ask your parents. By the way, there'll always be one outlier, says a commenter, and that's fine. I'm not going to ban him or anything. My mom spent 10 years in a nursing home at $10,000 a month. Always be that one person. I grant you. There will always be that person. Jesus himself said there will always be the poor. The poor will always be with us. And just because you spent 10 years in a nursing home at $10,000 a month inherently doesn't mean you're poor, but there will always be that exception. Just saw a light flashing in front of my eyes. So let's look at this from the BLS. The planning ahead, consumer expenditure patterns in retirement. We're going to compare pre-retirement spending versus post-retirement spending with three groups of people: single men, single women, and married couples, if that makes sense. All right. Now this is dated in 2002. The mailman's here, 2002, which is, so you're going to say it's dated. I'm telling you guys, if you go to the BLS tool, the monthly labor review, you're going to see, we'll see here, spending. Yeah, right there. So let's go to, yeah, right here. Spending by older consumers, 1980 and 1990 compared. We just got so many different instances of spending by retirees. It's crazy, man. Every decade they do another study, and it's always the same thing. So I just thought I'd pull this off right here. So given the relationship of income to expenditures, all right, differences in expenditure patterns for pre-retirees and retirees are expected for many reasons. Differences in spending. One is going to be because retirees don't have as much income. Given the relationship of income to expenditures, we know that for a fact. Retirees don't have as much income as they did when they're working. And we know we spend to the extent of our income. All right, so let's keep going. This is great. Let me see what I'm talking about here, right here. Go down the next page here. Ruben and Kenneth, that guy, examine how elderly households spend on necessities compared with non-elderly households. All right, then we go right here. Then we go down right here to a person right here. The authors find differences between the young old and the old, as they term the groups, across all major category of expenses. All right, so the young old would be the young retired, and the old, the older retired. Yep, 100%. Then we got Nancy Schwank here, and she says she provides some discussion of the expenditures, specifically the fact that the allocation of total spending for retirement, pensions, and Social Security is significantly less for a household in retirement than it is for households who are not retired. Shocking. I mean, that shouldn't shock anybody, simply because you're not saving for your retirement anymore. So all the expenditures you're using pre-retirement for, in terms of funding your 401k and all that, 7.65 for Social Security and Medicare and all that, it's all gone. In terms of demographics, she knows the majority of consumers age 65 and older own their own home, and that those of who are homeowners mostly own their home free and clear, 81%. This is in 2002. It's a little bit less now this year, but still the vast majority of people 65 and older own their own home. And about a majority of them actually own their homes free and clear. All right. All right, here. This was finally, Schwank finds that in 1991, income from dividends, interest, and rent provided about 20% of retirees' total income. And that might not be you, probably won't be me, but who knows? Health was the only category of all expenditures for which households with a retired person spent more than an employed person. Shocking, shocking. Let's keep going here. We got this right here. Furthermore, previous research has shown that there are significant differences between those aged 65 and 74 and those aged 75 and older in terms of household characteristics, income, and expenditures. Yep. Therefore, in this paper, The consumer unit age 75 and older is not even used in the sample. This is only for basically the 10 years pre-retirement and the 10 years post-retirement. That's it. That's a tough comparison. 10 years pre-retirement is when you're making your most money. The 10-year post-retirement is your first 10 years of expenditures in retirement. It's the people in their 75 and 80 and whatnot. Those are the people who aren't spending crap. And yet we're going to show you here that even with that, you're going to have a significant drop-off in expenditures. It's crazy. Let's keep going. Go down here. This next to last chapter right here. Thus, an important question is how retirement itself affects expenditure patterns. That is, whether taste and preferences change in retirement, even if the incomes are held constant. All right, interesting. Now we go to single men. Single retired men are more likely to be homeowners than single pre-retired men. Isn't that interesting? 72% of single retired men are homeowners, only 62% of single pre-retired men. The difference is even more pronounced if the homeowner holds no mortgage against his property. 64%, two-thirds basically, of single male retirees own their homes outright, compared with only 30% of the pre-retired. That makes sense, actually. I mean, because you have more time to pay off your mortgage, for sure. Single fairer half, the housing and tenure degree of urbanization for single women follow the same patterns as those for single men. That is, retirees are more likely to be homeowners without a mortgage than pre-retirees. Shocking. Married couples, homeownership is more likely to be in the retired sample than the pre-retired sample. Furthermore, there's a lower percentage of renters in the married couple sample. Only 5% of retirees are renters. 5% were renters. So going back to the whole thing with CPI, I want to have owner equivalent rent and rent itself. Doesn't make any sense. Only 5% of retirees who are husband and wife are renters. This doesn't make any sense. All right, let's keep going. It's just, where do people get their money from? Retirees, 98.3% get it from Social Security, private and government retirement. That includes IRAs and whatnot. 99%, that's for single men. 99.3% of women do the same, and 100% of married people do the same. So they're all getting Social Security, man. So the idea that they're going to cut Social Security is just preposterous. All right, let's keep going. Check this out. Single male retirees have significantly lower total incomes than do pre-retired single men. 24,000 to 42,000. Approximately 77% of pre-retirees' income is from wages and salaries. Isn't that interesting? Yes, sir. As with single male households, total income before taxes is significantly higher for the pre-retired single women, 30,000 to 15,000. So retired single women are taking a 50% income cut, and men are not quite as much, about the same. But check this out. Income before taxes for married couples, 75,000. That's before taxes for pre-retirees. 27,000 for retirees. Interesting. Let's keep going here. Specifically, we're going to go to outlays here. We're going to look at specifically where right here. Specifically, certain items of expense are excluded and other forms of expenditure when we're trying to allocate or analyze expenditures for other forms of expenditures. And that's another thing I don't like about the CPI, by the way. For instance, mortgage principal is listed as a reduction in liabilities, not an expenditure. That drives me up the wall. So like CPI says, oh, your mortgage interest is actually it's increasing your asset. It's not a liability because you're paying down your asset. But should be an expense. That doesn't make it. I never understood that. It doesn't make any sense because you're paying your principal. That's not an expense. It is. It comes out of your pocket. You got to pay that. As previously noted in the demographic section, the majority of retirees in all three household types are homeowners without mortgages, while a higher proportion of pre-retirees still make payments on their home. Therefore, so retirees without mortgages. So they're trying to do a comparison here, which is good. I'm just trying to set this up right here. In general, the results indicate that pre-retired and retired households do spend differently across all types. For the majority of spending categories within each household type, the differences are statistically significant. The homeownership rates and mortgage status comparison is not surprising that pre-retired consumer units spend more than retirees on shelters and utilities. Yep. All right, so let's just go to the table here. All right, so this is by quarter, by the way. Quarterly outlays. So pre-retirees, this is single men, single women, married couples. Pre-retiree men spend about $6,800 a quarter. Retirees spend about $5,000 a quarter. That's it. All right. Women, $6,200 to $5,000. All right, so you can see The single women still spend almost as much as single men do in retirement, but their income has gone down significantly more for men, because men had $600 to $800 a quarter in income and went down to 5,000. Women had $6,200 a quarter in income of expenditures, and went down to 5,000 as well. Crazy. Look at this though. Married couples, $10,000 is their pre-retirement expenditures quarterly. 7,000 is their retired expenditures. Isn't that nuts? Everything dropped. Food at home went down, except for single women. Single women are eating at home more. Isn't that interesting? It dropped for men. Single women actually went up. But watch what happened to single women. Their food out went down, 182. I mean, almost like a 50% decline. Isn't that crazy? Men single, going to bars and restaurants, whatnot. But it went down for everybody. Transportation was less than half. A little bit, not quite less than half. Look at that. Transportation went down big time. So housing went down, food went down, transportation went down, vacation, trips all went down pretty significantly. Single men went from 387 to 212, 271 to 211 for single women, and not quite as much for married couples, which makes sense. Apparel went down, even for the ladies. Their apparel expenditures went down, still more than men, almost double that of men. Healthcare went up. The interesting thing is even men healthcare went up. It went from $293 to $560 for pre-retirees versus retirees, whereas women went from $333 to $542, and then for married couples went higher. So healthcare went up. Entertainment went down across the board. The interesting thing was, check this out. Cash contributions went from $268 a quarter to pre-retirement men to $649 a quarter for post-retirement men. For married couples, went to $428 a quarter to $484 a quarter. For women, though, it went down between pre-retirement and post-retirement. And that might have something to do, they didn't make as much money and don't have as large of accounts in which to spend money on. But look at that. So for two of the three groups, but still, they're still spending pretty doggone close to what they did, the women, even before they retire. So what does that tell you? If you're trying to raise money, you go after single men, because their expenditures on cash contributions went up more than twofold. Isn't that crazy? Married people still went up. So if you're trying to focus your expenditure on getting charitable contributions, you focus on married retirees, and single men retirees. I thought that was it. And by the way, these things don't happen if people run out of money. It just doesn't happen. In fact, the women, even though it went down, they're still paying $328 a quarter. That doesn't happen if you run out of money. In fact, what we'll see here is that $328 a quarter, and their total expenditures is about, so 328 times 4 divided by basically about $20,000. That's what their total expenditures were. And again, this is 22 years ago. Yeah, they're still spending 6.5% of their money on charitable cash contributions. So they're not running out of money. All right, so here's the percent of retirees who spend food at home: 100%, 99.9% for women, 100% for single men, and 99.9% for retirement. And you can see that doesn't change much because most people eat food at home, but watch what food away from home. Less than a quarter of men, it drops from 90 to 73 from food away from home. Women drops from 80 to 71, and married couples 89 to 80. Isn't that weird? You're like, well, I thought people were going to eat out more. Well, they may, but in this case, remember, anybody over 75 is not even included in this. The average in this case is 7 years old for retirees, and yet even them, they're spending less on food away from home. Now, you could attribute they don't have any money. Okay, that might well be, but the cash contributions went up. So how do you attribute that? How do you attribute? I mean, look, and if you look at how much they're spending food away from home, 536. What? Cash contributions? Single men are giving more money, more away than they are actually spending on food away from home by 3 to 1. Women, food away from home, 110, and yet they're giving cash contributions again 3 to 1. Married couples, 500 basically, food away from home, 245, so 2 to 1. So it's not like they're running out of money because they would not be making these cash contributions. So their cash contributions are going up and their food away from home is going down. This means they're eating more at home. Look at that, it's crazy. So now watch, apparel and services. It drops from 81% of pre-retired men buy apparel and services to only 68.5%. Even women's desire to buy new clothes drops. Crazy. Entertainment drops. Out-of-town trips, 40% to 32, 41 to 36, 55 to 48. Transportation didn't drop that much. That's nuts. So let's just keep going. Then cash contributions, the only thing that jumps up is healthcare. It went from 39.8% probability of purchase to 71%. Other than cash contributions, nothing else went up. Isn't that crazy? Nutcases, there's the nutcase, whatever. I think it's nutcase. Here in a nutshell, eggshell. Here in a nutshell is the nutcase. That's what Fitty is. Fittigard is you got. This is the difference between men and women right here. This is pre-retiree single men and retired single men. Their expenditures on healthcare, 39.8% in terms of their percentage of how many people men spend on healthcare. Far less than half spend on healthcare while they're working. Once they're retired, it goes up to 71%. Women, on the other hand, 84% spend on healthcare while they're working. So women more than double the use of healthcare services while they're working. Isn't that crazy? And even when they retire, it still goes up a little bit, but it's such a high number to begin with. It's not that big. Isn't that nuts, though? And here you got the married couple. Well, the only reason the married couple is how to begin with because the wife, like my wife, is telling me, you got to go get that checked out. I'm like, ugh. But that's what happens, man. Isn't that crazy? Anyway, so you can see transportation costs go way down. Dude, I would highly encourage you to, I think I had one other thing here. Talk about like why you might not travel as much when you're retired. And they use the same example here on food. Pre-retirees may be purchasing more food away from home while they're working more frequently because they do not have the same amount of leisure time as retirees. I don't know about that. It seems to me if you have more leisure time, you might be more inclined to, I'm going to go get something to eat. But I get it. They're saying, look, if you're bouncing around all over the place, you're probably just going to pick up something at the store rather than eating. I get that. But that can be the same for both sides. Like, aren't you going to spend more once you're retired? Remember, this stops at 75 years old. The older you get, the less you're going to be going out. The study has analyzed expenditure patterns by pre-retirees and retirees to help understand expenditure patterns, how they differ upon retirement for single men, women, and married couples. Many differences have been found. Some of these are undoubtedly due to differences that are to be expected upon retirement. For example, you might have paid off your house, 100%. That's a big one right there. And we know that women use healthcare more than men. We talk about that. But again, none of this would happen if you're running out of money because the cash contributions would go to zero. And they're not. They're actually gone up significantly. Anyway, can you retire? Just ask them. Say, parents, what did you see in your own expenditures when you retired? Did you see it growing up? Like the 4% rule assumes that your spending goes up each and every month, or did you see it going down? I'd love to put it in the show notes. I'd love to hear your feedback. All right, God bless. We'll see you.